Shane, Shane, Shane. Shane, 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 Shane. A-L-A-N-Allen. A-L-A-N-Allen. Allen, 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 Allen.
Hey, NFL Week 17 preview, the 38th parallel. I'm excited for today's episode, Alan. Very excited.
Yes. We're coming down to it now. Ladies and gentlemen, it doesn't matter who's playing on what channel. You got to savor every moment because the end of football season is nigh. What am I going to do with my life in about 2 weeks?
World Cup.
I don't know. No, that's not football. That's soccer. And we don't watch soccer in America.
How dare you?
Kicking off tonight's show, a quick playoff update, actually extra quick playoff update because there's so many games this week being played. Yeah. Of course, we had 3 games on Christmas, followed by a couple of games today, including one that's being played right now. But we're going to try our best taking a look at the AFC, NFC playoff pictures. The glass half full way looking at is the playoffs are pretty much all but settled. It's just a matter of who's going to be what seed, with the exception of a couple of pesky conferences with some really, really mediocre records. So with the Texans' defeat of the Chargers earlier this afternoon, you're looking at your AFC playoff picture. So the Steelers, Ravens, the Ravens haven't technically been eliminated yet, though the Colts have. If the Ravens were to lose to Green Bay, which as of this moment, they are leading actually 20-13. But if they lose, or if the Steelers win against the Browns, then that's it. Those are your AFC playoff teams. It's just a matter of who wins what division, which teams are hosting, which teams are playing on the road. So congratulations to Broncos, Patriots, Jags, Steelers, Bills, Chargers, Texans. Those are, of course, no Kansas City, no Baltimore Ravens, Bills on the road. That's exactly the way we predicted it, Shane. I know you and I had all of those correct.
Yes.
Hey, you know what? Real quick before we move to the NFC, we did pick the Broncos, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
So how about that? Over there on the NFC side, we're pretty close to the same thing. So the Buccaneers and Panthers winner is if the Buccaneers lose and the Panthers win this weekend, or if the Panthers beat the Bucs next week, then the Panthers will win the NFC South. If the Buccaneers win out and the Panthers lose, then the Buccaneers will win the NFC South. So the winner of that game and all of those other teams are set. It's just a matter, again, of who wins what division, who earns what seed. As of this moment, it's Seahawks, Bears, Eagles, Bucks, followed by Rams, 49ers, Packers. Of course, 3 teams from your NFC West. But for some weird reason, I can't quite put my finger on it. The 49ers are the number 3 team out of those 3 teams. But still a huge game next week between the Seahawks and 49ers. But once again, we're all but certain that's your AFC, NFC playoff picture. As far as our predictions for the NFC, I think we expected the NFC West to be good.
Mm-hmm.
I think we expected the NFC South to be bad. I think I definitely thought the Eagles had a pretty good chance to repeat, which they are. They're not looking as dominant this year, but they did win the NFC East and are going to be in the playoffs. That's already set in stone. But the Bears currently the odds-on favorite to win the NFC North. Now that one, I think, probably took everybody by surprise. What would you say of just what we talked about so far? What would you say is the biggest positive surprise? Which team in that list right there is the biggest shocker to you?
I think you just said it. The Chicago Bears. I mean, we kind of see the Green Bay Packers always kind of being in that top team. So we expected them to be good. And then the Vikings also. The Vikings win. I mean, they're a huge nosedive from what they had last season.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think the Chicago Bears are kind of that team that there were some expectations, but not this what people were seeing now. I mean, yeah, they have a huge possibility of winning the NFC North, the number 1 seed. I mean, Ben Johnson's doing wonders over there, so congratulations to them.
Yeah. I'll say on the AFC side, I think a lot of people had high hopes for Mike Vrabel in New England. I think definitely Patriots fans thought they had their guy. I don't think everyone expected it would be in his first year that they would be in position where they are. They just assumed that the Bills would still have control of the AFC East. And as for the NFC side, of course, there's still one huge game to be played, assuming the Seahawks get past the Panthers, which the Rams couldn't. There's still a huge game to be played next week. But when Sam Darnold went to Seattle, I think a lot of Seattle fans were hopeful that they had their guy under center. But for them to be in line to be the number 1 seed, that's not just hopeful. That's we're set for some years to come. So excited for the Seattle Seahawks. Really quick look before we move on to our Week 17 Q&A for the teams not in those standings. Let's talk about draft order. How about that? Let's talk about NFL draft order right now. The Las Vegas Raiders and New York Giants, the number 1 and number 2s, are playing. They're playing tomorrow, Shane.
Oh, I can't wait for that one.
The loser of that game, or winner, depending on what you're shooting for, the loser of that contest is pretty much certain to be the number 1 seed. And then you're followed closely behind by the Browns, who won't have a stake in that contest, but are waiting there in the wings if one or both of those teams were to win another game. Followed by the Jets, that are all but eliminated from the 1 seed, but should be picking in the top, certainly picking in the top 5. And then you have the Tennessee Titans, who inexplicably won 2 out of their last 3 games. Some other teams that fall into that category, the Saints, for instance, who have been on a little bit of a heater with rookie quarterback Tyler Shuck, and also the Dolphins, who at one point in time were on a long losing streak, but then won 4 in a row, I believe it was, to still be in the top 10, but not be in a serious risk of picking in the top 5 or number 1. After those teams, you have a few others. Of course, the Bengals, even though the Bengals will be back with a healthy Joe Burrow, they are currently picking in the top 10. Interesting enough, the LA Rams, who have Super Bowl aspirations this year, they have Atlanta's number 1 pick next year. So right now, Atlanta's pick is 11th, and that's going to the Rams, who are have a lot of momentum going in. Yeah, I know. How about that? Yeah. The Chiefs, with certainly a disastrous season this year, but it's hard to imagine the Chiefs are just going to go away for the rest of Mahomes' career. But they're actually going to be picking 12th, followed by the Ravens, Cowboys, and the Vikings that you mentioned, and then Lions. And actually, sure enough, the Jets actually have 2 first-round picks next year, one from Indianapolis. So Indianapolis, who started strong but faded late, are currently giving the Jets a pick around the middle of the first round, and the Jets will be picking in the top 5. So little bit of reason for optimism going into next year. But with all that being said, we're going to move on to our Week 17 Q&A. Shane, I hope you guys had a wonderful Christmas. We didn't really do a lot this year. It was kind of quiet. And since it was kind of quiet, we decided, we'll just have dinner. We'll kick back and watch some football. Except for this year, it was a Christmas football bust. Let me tell you this. There were three mediocre games. 4 of the teams playing in those games were already eliminated from the postseason. Now with the Lions losing, that's 5 of the 6 teams that played on Thursday are all out of the playoffs. 3 of the teams were starting not just backups, but third-string quarterbacks. And 2 of the games were on Netflix, which brings yet another streaming service to professional football. I'm going to start off there with question number 1. Do you think that the NFL should reserve more flexibility when it comes to their ability to flex games in and out of prime time and holidays to avoid a situation like this where you have 3 contests on a holiday and all 3 of them are, let's be honest, are kind of stinkers?
Yeah, I think obviously when they were making the schedule before the season started, they were banking on some of these games being really good, but that didn't end up happening. The Redskins and Cowboys played, and of course the Cowboys aren't in the playoffs anymore. Neither are the Redskins, so it was whatever. 2 teams in the NFC East, whatever. I guess it's an NFC East division battle, so there's that, I guess. But in terms of flexibility, I think so. I think they need to let some teams go in there that like say for example the Giants Raiders game. Get that, whatever.
Mhm.
If say that was a primetime game, get that out of there. Let's put some other good team matchup in there. So yeah, I definitely think they need to have more flexibility for sure.
I do know that they have those obligations where, like, for instance, Dallas and Detroit tend to play on all the holidays,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
but even if we're including those games in there, for one, that maybe that's a relic of the past. I don't know. I understand that there's a certain tradition to that, and I'm sure that there's certain contractual agreements between the league and certain franchises that we're going to be hosting certain games and this, that, and the other. And by the way, not everybody wants to play on Christmas. I'm sure a lot of people would like to be at home eating ham and enjoying time with loved ones and not playing a game on Christmas.
Yeah.
But we have the 3 games, and all 3 games were bad. I get that they don't know, 3 months, 4 months in advance who's going to be where in the playoff race and all that.
Yeah.
But not, it wasn't just that the teams weren't great, and it wasn't just that there wasn't a lot of stakes in the games, but then to add insult to injury, a lot of key players weren't even dressed.
Yeah, that's true.
They're wearing sweats, and on the sideline and wearing headsets. Speaking of which, those first 2 games, Dallas at Washington, and then Detroit and Minnesota, those games were on Netflix. Now, Netflix, of course, then that's bringing another streaming service. So this is my question for you, because I think this is a topic that a lot of people were debating pretty hotly, specifically on Christmas when they were being forced to watch these games. Has the expansion of streaming services helped or hurt football? So Netflix now joins Amazon Prime / Twitch, Peacock / NBC, YouTube. We had a YouTube game earlier in the year, CBS / Paramount Plus, Fox and Fox One. There's, of course, ESPN, ESPN Plus, ABC, and also NFL Network. That's an awful lot of streaming services for people to have if they just want to watch football.
Yeah, it's I don't know. I think that I think it's too much. I mean, out of all of those though that you said, get Netflix out of there. I don't even know how Netflix even got into it in the first place. I really don't. It doesn't make any sense. If Netflix is going to be a part of it, don't just let it be Christmas games or something. Let it be part, like the whole season. Prime has games all season. If you want Netflix to be a part of that, then let them have all the games. But as of right now, I don't want Netflix there. It's too much. Even like ABC and ESPN, it's just, well, it's on ABC. It's on ESPN. It's on ESPN Plus. But also ESPN has the Manning cast. You can go watch Peyton Manning and Eli Manning with a guest. And I think they just added another one with Luke Kuechly with the next gen stats. They have a whole other broadcast over there. So it's just like, not only is it the channels you have to go to, but it's different broadcasts that you can watch. It's crazy the amount of stuff that we have. The competition is ridiculous.
So here's my thing. I get that. Okay, you have Thursday Night Football, that's sort of its own thing, and different companies are bidding for the rights to broadcast that. And then, of course, you have Sunday Night Football, which is currently on NBC / Peacock. And then you have Monday Night Football, and those are kind of their own little institutions. And then all of the rest of the games are typically just Sunday afternoon, the early game, the early window and the late window. But they've now broken it down to where, depending on if it's a holiday week, if it's a holiday weekend, if they decide to play a Friday game or a Saturday game, if they play multiple games on what is normally a primetime game. You and I have already kind of complained earlier in the year when they were doing like the double headers where I'm trying to watch Monday Night Football, but I can't even watch all the games because either they're overlapping or they're not overlapping. And the second game's not even over until like 2 a.m. No, some of us have to go to work. Some of us have to have families. You got things to do. I know you guys want to go to bed. You don't want to be up at 1:30 trying to watch, the very end of a 20-10, slow game or whatever. So that's a big part of it. I really don't like the way the schedule's gone. This is the last thing I'll say, and I'll let you have the last word.
Okay.
So I understand that the NFL is trying to broaden its reach, right? They're trying to find new fans. They're trying to expand and sell more product, enjoy more content. And one of the ways they're doing that is they're sending all these games overseas. there's Mexico City, there's Spain, there's Germany, there's the UK, there's Ireland. There's all these, in college football is starting to do it as well.
Oh, really?
And so they're willing to send all of these teams overseas to try to get people in those markets a chance to watch an American football game, while some 8-year-old American here in the United States can't watch their team because their family can't afford all 11 streaming services.
Yeah.
I don't care for that.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. In college football, I don't understand why. Yeah, Colorado versus, James Madison's going to be playing in freaking Antarctica. Yeah, okay, whatever. I don't even understand that aspect of it.
I forget. I think it was Iowa State and K-State, I think, was this year's kickoff Ireland game.
So flyover country is going to go to Ireland. Yeah, okay.
Yes. Flyover country's going absolutely right. Yes, sir.
That makes no sense.
Right.
No,
that's right.
Maybe the Notre Dame Fighting Irish should go play in Ireland. That makes a little bit more sense because the name, whatever. I mean, but still, that's. I'm sorry, that's stupid. But
well, on that note, because it gets even worse from there. So you had all the streaming services, you have all the meaningless football, and then just to add insult to injury, the Detroit Lions, who, by the way, were playing for their playoff lives. It was win or go home. They had 6 turnovers in their Christmas game for everyone eating in the afternoon. 5 of those were for QB Jared Goff. They fell 23-10 to the Max Brosmer-led Minnesota Vikings, dropping them to last place in the NFC North and ending their playoff hopes. By the way, Max Brosmer, accounting for sack yardage, had 3 yards of offense.
Wow.
And they won the game. So I'll ask you this.
Wow.
Do you think the Lions are the most disappointing team in NFL this year?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, they're definitely one of them for sure. I mean, let's just look at some of the records from last season to this season. So last season, the Ravens were 12-5. And
okay.
And now they're, not as good as this season. I mean, Lamar Jackson being injured has a lot to do with that. Obviously the Chiefs not making the playoffs from last year to this year. There's one. I mean, maybe we're not disappointed personally, but in terms of what the team is expected to be and where they are now, that's disappointing. And looking over in the NFC side, the Lions are probably the biggest disappointment for sure. I mean, it's, I guess you can even say the Buccaneers are in that category too, because I mean, yeah, they won the NFC South, but that whole division itself is terrible. So I don't know, but I would also contend and maybe even contest the Lions being the bigger disappointment with the Vikings being right behind them, where the Lions were 15-2 last season. The Vikings were 14-3. The Vikings aren't even in the playoffs this season. So that's pretty bad. So I think the Lions are the biggest disappointment, but I would definitely put the Vikings in that category too.
I think I definitely get the criticism of the Vikings. At least with them, you knew that they were going to be starting a pseudo rookie in JJ McCarthy, who is his second year, but basically his first season. And you knew that they decided early that they weren't going to be holding on to Sam Darnold. Now Sam Darnold's in Seattle. Seattle has a chance at the number 1 seed. You knew that there was going to be a change of the guard. You just didn't expect them to fall off by like 10 wins. I will put it that way. Right. But to be fair, the Lions were the number 1 seed, and so they went from number 1 seed to out of the playoffs. Yeah. Here's in the final point on the Lions being this. Last year, of course, you remember they had all of those injuries, so many injuries, specifically on defense, that they still managed to make it to the postseason as the number 1 seed, but of course were bounced early. They just finally ran out of healthy bodies. They just didn't have anyone left to put on the field in the postseason. But with that said, that would make you hopeful that going into this year, well, if that same team whose unit is roughly intact but healthy, they would be an odds-on favorite this year. And that just never materialized. I mean, remember right out of the gate with that blowout loss to Green Bay in week 1.
Right.
It was clear that something wasn't quite right. I think the blame will probably ultimately the blame is going to go on head coach Dan Campbell because he's the head coach. That's where the blame always goes. But more specifically, it's the coaching staff. When you've had as much success in a short span as the Lions, you're going to lose some people. And of course, Ben Johnson, who you mentioned, being in Chicago, and Aaron Glenn, who's over in the New York Jets. You lose your offensive and defensive coordinators, your play caller changes, then Dan Campbell takes over the play calling. There's a little bit of an improvement in their offensive numbers when he does, but ultimately it doesn't translate to wins in the win column. So I'm definitely going to say the Lions. I'm really afraid for the Lions because I like Dan Campbell, and I would like to see the Lions be a good team. But this year was definitely an eye-opening year. I mean, this was a year where even being in a division with a team as bad as the Vikings, which beat them, by the way, in a do-or-die game yesterday with a third-string quarterback, I mean, the Bears and Packers are looking good. The Lions suddenly are back to being third place at best. And right now they're actually fourth place with the loss yesterday. They're down to, they went from number 1 seed to last place in their division.
Jeez.
I don't know if there is a fix for them other than them hiring new coordinators to replace the guys who left and replace the guys they replaced them with, who can circle the wagons. I'm feeling very down on the Lions. I was so hopeful going into this year with the way last year ended. I wasn't disappointed. I was hopeful. Now with the way this year ended, I'm afraid. I don't want to say the phrase "same old Lions." I don't think that's fair, but we're that close. We're that close to being back to the same old Lions.
Yeah.
So wait. Oh, go ahead.
No, just real quick. Another team that we can add to that is the Redskins. You know, the Redskins made the NFC Championship game, and now
they did.
And they're not even going to be in the playoffs this year. So, and they made some good moves in this offseason. I mean, they got Deebo Samuel. I know him not personally, but I know because he was the Niners. So he was supposed to be kind of a big boost for their offense. And Jaden Daniels was supposed to have this huge leap from what happened last year, but didn't happen. So.
I'm willing to give the Redskins an excuse because when Jane Daniels' arm is like this, but then it's like this.
Oh yeah, well yeah.
You're not gonna be playing a lot of good football.
Sure, yeah.
So with that said, let's move on to talking about we're going into the final weekend of or the next to penultimate weekend of the year. Let's talk about what's left for the winners and for the losers. Going into tomorrow, there are 27 games left in the NFL regular season. Oh my God, man, Shane, what are we going to do with our lives? A handful of games, only a handful, still have serious playoff implications, but most of the outcomes either mean nothing to this year's playoffs or they feature a heavily favored team against a team that's playing for nothing, essentially. Which means we're to the point in the season where the conversation kind of moves from whether or not to rest starters and jockey for potential postseason matchups or tank for the draft. So with that said, we're going on to our next question for you, Shane. For the winning teams who have their playoff berth locked up, we talked about that to start the show. Some of them, once again, the playoff seeding can change, but by and large, the playoffs are mostly set at this point. So think of teams like Chicago, think of teams like Philadelphia, who they're set in stone. Nothing's going to change. Right. Think of teams like the Broncos, who have officially won the AFC West already with the Chargers loss today. Are you a believer in resting starters to close the regular season? Or do you prefer to finish out the year as normal, or do you fall somewhere in the middle? If it's the 49ers, do you want them to rest everybody, play everybody, or somewhere in the middle?
Well, yeah, if it was the 49ers, I would probably want the players to play because I feel like maybe it's not 100%, but I think there probably is something to they're not out there for a week, and then that mojo kind of leaves or whatever for a little bit. Not being out in the field because you kind of want to be in that groove. Because once you're in that groove, you know it could be over for a lot of people. But so a prime example of this that when I was looking into this a little bit was the Indianapolis Colts in 2009. They had a chance to be perfect, a perfect regular season. But then in week 16, I think it was. They were facing the Jets. They pulled their starters out halfway in the game, and they brought in all their other because hey, we already made the playoffs. We're cool. We don't have to do anything. Home field advantage. We're smooth sailing.
Sure.
They take their players out, bring their backups. They end up losing that game, And then the next week they do the same thing. They don't have any of their starters in there, and all the other people lose that game too. So they end up being 14-2. Now, at the grand scheme of things, it's to make the playoffs. It's all cool. But when you're a fan and you pay good money to go see these people, I don't want to go see Curtis Painter out there. I want to see Peyton Manning. I want to see Peyton Manning do his thing out there, right? Or whoever's the main quarterback there, or whoever the main players are. Now, they do end up making the Super Bowl. Remember that famous Super Bowl against the New Orleans Saints where where Peyton Manning throws that game-ending interception. They end up losing that game, but could that have something to do with it where the players didn't play for 2 weeks? I mean, it's possible, but they still make the Super Bowl. So I don't know. I just thought that was kind of interesting how we're still talking about that to this day, that particular season where they had a chance to be perfect, just like the New England Patriots at the later on, I think it was, or whenever they had that perfect season. But yeah.
Well, I want to reference a couple of the exact same arguments that you're making, because I feel like they go both ways. Yeah. So the Colts, you remember all those years with the Tony Dungy, specifically the Tony Dungy Colts. Peyton Manning was there in the earlier half of his prime. They had multiple seasons where they're 13-3, 14-2, 12-4, that area, and they were running away with the AFC South. And most of those seasons, they always made the decision to rest starters. And then Peyton, for a big chunk of his career, was criticized because his teams were getting bounced early in the playoffs. So the rest wasn't helping them, obviously. But then the year that they finally broke through, it was the 2006 season, and they won the Super Bowl in February 2007. That year was a year where they actually had a little bit more adversity than they had in previous years. And so they were required to put more effort in late in the season to secure the same playoff position that they had been enjoying but failing. And then, surprise, surprise, they win the Super Bowl. So Dungy always stood by his decision to rest starters. He felt like it was objectively the right thing to do. But at least the performance on the field certainly seemed to indicate that they needed to be playing to stay sharp, especially in a team that had such kind of a finesse offense that they had, putting the ball in the air so much. Now, to your point, the exact opposite example, the very next season, the 2007 season, 2007, 2008, that very next year was the year that the Patriots go 18-1. Right. And since they were 15-0 going into their final game of the year, in a game that meant absolutely nothing to them at all other than trying to remain perfect. And you know who their opponent was in that last game that meant nothing to them at all? It was the New York Giants. In a game that the Giants didn't need, but it was worthwhile to win. But the Patriots didn't need it at all. They already had the number 1 seed locked up in the AFC. And that game ended up going absolutely down to the wire, and the Patriots ultimately prevailed. But they let the Giants have a field test of the blueprint that would come back to haunt them a few weeks later. The Giants given another opportunity to just tighten the bolts just a little bit more. Yeah. And then they beat them and they make them 18-1. So I would be willing to argue that while obviously I understand trying to go for perfection, I bet you those guys would have rather won the Super Bowl and been 18-1 than their one loss being the Super Bowl. I promise you that's what every single one of them would say. I'm willing to bet, we'll never know, but I'm willing to bet that if the Patriots had played nobody and the Giants just basically played a glorified walkthrough in the end of the regular season, and then had to face the juggernaut Patriots in the Super Bowl with no game tape, I'm not sure they win. So I'm just saying.
No, those are good examples. I mean, that's the arguably the biggest upset in sports history. Really, I mean, nobody was expecting. Almost nobody was expecting.
It was ridiculous that the Giants were there at all, because the Giants weren't even good, and then on top of that, they played the 18-0 Patriots in the Super Bowl and beat them.
So I don't know if this is a similar argument or not, but it's so like now the playoff structure, it's always been like this, where when you get the number 1 seed, home field advantage, you have that break in the like before you like from the end of the season to when the playoffs start, you have a break there for a week. Historically, that hasn't really damaged number one teams. I mean, more likely than not, a number one team will go to the Super Bowl. So I don't know if that will hurt them at all, just because you have that automatic rest. But obviously, having home field advantage is going to be the main factor there. I mean,
yeah. So that's the thing too. In the updated playoff format of seven teams, and only the number one seed gets an opening round bye. That means that if you're the number one seed and you also rest your starters to end the season, that means you're now going upwards of 2 weeks, maybe even 3 weeks without playing. That's it's kind of like college bowl season, where they finish the season at the end of November, 1st of December, and then their bowl game is like January 1st. That's a really long time. It's a really long time. With that said, we talked about the winning teams. Let's talk a little bit about the losing teams. So the teams that were on our draft board there, that whose playoffs hopes are dashed. Let me ask you this. Are you same question, but for the teams on the other end of the spectrum? Are you a believer in having your starters play out the year as normal, especially even star players and ones with injury histories? So think a Dak Prescott, a Joe Burrow, a Jaden Daniels. Or do you think it's an opportunity to kind of get an extended look at your depth and start evaluating talent for next year? So I'll give you the exact examples right now. Dak Prescott and Joe Burrow are both going to be finishing the season despite having, quote, nothing to play for, whereas Jaden Daniels is going to be sitting out the rest of the year. And while Daniels had injury issues this season, so did Joe Burrow with the toe. And of course, Dak Prescott is coming off of a season where he just missed basically a year of football. So different teams, you're seeing different teams do it different ways. Some teams want them playing hard to finish the year. Other teams are essentially benching their starters before the end of the season. What would you do? If the 49ers were 6-10, would you want Brock Purdy, George Kittle, Christian McCaffrey? Would you want all those guys playing every snap? Or would you say, you know what? Let's get ready for next year.
I feel like with that type of thing, where when you're winning and you have the number one, your number one seed, you have the home field advantage, whatever. It's a little bit of a different thing, because you do want your players to continue playing and you want them to win at all costs, whatever. But with this, where you have hardly anything to play for, I would probably be, okay, Purdy, I know you want to play. Maybe we'll play the first quarter, and then after that, the backup will go in. Kind of still have your toes wet a little bit, so you know how it feels. I mean, that's kind of a stupid thing to say. At least you know how it feels to be out in the field, right? But yeah, I would.
So you're kind of in the middle then.
I am kind of in the middle, yeah. Because especially, if we're talking about just this team, because I'm talking about the 49ers, talking about this team and the injuries that have happened, I want to try and alleviate that as much as possible, because they've already dealt with a ton of injuries. I don't want more. I don't want Brock Purdy getting hurt again. I don't want George Kittle. He's probably going to be out against the Bears. Most likely. It's still possible he could play, but he has injury history. CMC has history of injuries. So I don't know. It really depends on, I think, what your team, like if your team hasn't really dealt with injuries all that much, it's probably a little different. Like, yeah, you can go ahead and play. But yeah, it kind of really depends, I think. So I am more in the middle on that.
I think for me, I think it comes down to a position by position basis. I will say this. A lot of players have incentives in their contracts. It can be a certain number of tackles. It can be a certain number of starts. It can be, a certain number of yards if you're a skill position player. Right. I think if there's a player that has a realistic shot at an incentive, you owe it to him to play. Sure. Like, look, he signed a contract to play for your team, and if he's been holding up his end of the bargain, you should be putting him on the field so he can make money. Yeah. So I do feel that way. With that, on the other side of that token, again, I'll use your 49ers as an example. Christian McCaffrey's had a great year. Had a great year
for sure.
And after last year, we weren't sure if there was going to be more run CMC.
I still have that slide of him. I still have that slide of him sliding in Buffalo, where he's like, "Yeah, I can't do this anymore." Yeah.
But in either event, even if the 49ers were 17-1 or 16-1 and they didn't need to play their starters, or they were 1-16 and didn't need to play their starters, I think if CMC was intending on playing another year, why would you put more mileage on him? If there's nothing to play
point.
for,
Yeah.
it's like, you know what, CMC, who either is going to win the Super Bowl or break both knees, how about you have a seat?
Yeah.
We'll have you have a seat
Good
on the
point.
now. Brock Purdy, you get your ass in that game at least for a half.
Yeah,
we'll have
right.
Brock Purdy play for a half. We'll have Kittle play for a half. You know, CMC, take a shower. You know,
Yeah.
that's kind of what I would say. With the Cowboys, for instance, because they are in that boat. They do need to be thinking about next year. This year's problems were overwhelmingly injuries and defense, and they're going to have to overhaul their defense. They're probably going to be firing their defensive coaching staff, but their offense has been great. But Dak missed a bunch of time last year, and this was his return season. So I would like to see those guys finish strong because you're going to need that unit to be leading your team next year as well. Yeah. So I do like seeing them play. Now, with that said, you know, they won on Christmas. Good for them. Their last game is against the Giants next week against the Giants, which may or may not be tanking for the number 1 pick, which we're going to talk about that next. But depending on how that Giants game is looking, again, have Dak and CD and Pickens and Javonte, have all those guys start. And if it's 21-3 at halftime, take a shower.
Yeah,
that's kind of what I would say. Speaking of tanking for the draft, Shane, it's officially illegal, by the way, in the NFL to purposely lose, to tank for a draft pick. Though obviously that's nearly impossible to prove / enforce, right? Teams ultimately have to say on who starts and who doesn't. You know, they set their game day rosters. So it's really hard to prove that a team was purposely tanking. But with that said, what are your thoughts? At the end of the day, what are your thoughts on teams allegedly tanking for draft position? So examples, Giants, Raiders this week, and potential roster moves by the Browns, Jets, Cardinals, Redskins going into this week and next week, because those are kind of the teams jockeying around the top 5. What's your overall thoughts? Do you think do you give teams a pass for purposely making moves to help their draft pick, or do you think that goes against the spirit of the game?
Well, how would you purposely tank for the number 1 seat or number 1 draft pick? Like the quarterback obviously throws to the other team, like, here you go, here's the ball up in the air. You know,
the way the Bengals could obviously tank is Joe Burrow doesn't play another snap.
Okay. Yeah. So basically,
teams have plenty of ways to do it without purposely committing actions on the field. I could start my whole damn practice squad, and there's nothing you could do about it. But you know that I'm not trying my hardest to win, because if I was trying my hardest to win, then Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase would be running go routes right now, as opposed to you look at the Redskins, look at Josh Johnson and whoever Josh Johnson was throwing. I don't even know whoever Josh Johnson was throwing to. They're literally AI generated players, Shane, that were playing for the Redskins on Christmas.
We see.
But do you think it's right? Do you think it's right for teams to do that because they're thinking draft pick rather than thinking it's our job to try to win football games?
Well, I think you want to win. I mean, that's the thing. You want to win football games. It's like Herm Edwards says, you play to win the game, right? The whole thing. Mm-hmm. But
yes,
we saw the Raiders come up with a statement. Hey, Max Crosby's not playing anymore for this season. It's over. He's done. And he's mad. He's pissed off. He's
he is.
I don't want this. I'm leaving.
Max Crosby, you are a Dallas Cowboy. Yes.
I mean, he might as well be. He could possibly be next year for all we know. I mean, if that happens, then I'm gonna be giving you a high five in the air spiritually. But yeah, I mean, do I think it's wrong? I think it is wrong to just intentionally tank, but I think teams probably do try and find some ways to sneak it in. Now, I wanted to show something real quick. Now, look at this. So the Las Vegas Raiders and the New York Giants, they have their game here upcoming. Look at this preview. Look at the picks. Does one of them stand out to you?
4-2. Wow.
Yeah.
My God.
What is that?
I think if your defense was going to score one or more safeties and the only way you'd lose is if you gave up safeties, I'm pretty sure I could figure out a way to not have a safety. You know what I mean? Like, if I was guaranteed to win, provided I scored 2 or more points, I'm sure I could just run halfback dives and not be tackled in the end zone. I'm sure I could. But with that said, these are a couple of bad teams.
Yeah, or the quarterback just kneels every single time. You know, all right, just kneels it. You know.
Yeah,
There
yeah.
you go. And just punts it all the time.
Okay, so here's my thing. I understand. First of all, teams totally do it. We know teams do it. These teams are perfect examples. Teams do it. And I know that if your team had a chance to get the number 1 pick, you would be upset if you were gonna get the number 1 pick and you knew exactly who you were going to draft.
Right.
And then they go out there and play, you know, game of the century and win the game. You'd be mad if they did.
Yeah.
With that said, at the end of the day, the National Football League is run by the fans. The fans buy those tickets and they buy those jerseys and they watch they pay for their 11 streaming services to watch those games. And so the customer is always right. And you owe it to the customers to be putting a quality product on the field. So in the same way that I don't like teams that are perennially bad, teams that don't spend their whole salary cap, especially small market teams that are just basically there to collect a paycheck. They're not really interested in bringing in the right people to make their team better. In the same way that I hate that, I don't want to see teams who can't honestly look at the camera and say, we're doing everything we can to win. I think when you do that, you've opened up Pandora's box to some unsavory business practices. How dare you? Your nosebleed section seats in NFL games these days are like $150. How dare you charge those people those prices for those tickets? And you're going to chart, you know, Max Brosmer out there, even if you do win by accident. How dare you do that? So no, I don't care for it. I don't care for it at all.
Yeah, and that preview picks that I showed you, where Adam Rank is basically saying the Raiders are going to win 4-2. He's basically saying the Giants are going to get the number 1 pick. I want them to get the number 1 pick, not the Raiders. Screw the Raiders. So,
The interesting thing is, of course, you know, I'm sure that we'll have some weeks to do some after the postseason. We'll talk about our standout players. We'll talk about, you know, we'll do some draft analysis as it gets closer to draft season. But of those two teams, the Giants have their quarterback, right? And the Raiders don't. Yeah. So even if the Giants pick 1 and the Raiders pick 2, the Raiders would then still get to pick the quarterback they want. Yeah. And the Giants would, so I'm sure things ultimately will work out in the end. All I'm saying is that, I mean, especially the Raiders, you just moved your team out of Oakland, which is where like the only Raiders fans on earth. There's no Raiders fans in Vegas. Nobody in Vegas cares about the Raiders. And now you're not even going to try to win. Get that mess out of here. Fire everybody. I hate it. With that said, we're moving on to this week's picks. I tried to focus on 4 games that at least have some reason to watch, because we're running out of games that have anything going on. Yeah. We're going to start with the Seattle Seahawks, who control their destiny to the number 1 seed in the NFC, going on the road to play the Carolina Panthers. Shane, the Panthers are +7 underdogs at home. I know the Seahawks are currently number 1 in the NFC, but the Panthers did just beat. The only reason the Seahawks are the number 1 seed right now is because the Rams lost to the Panthers before they then lost to the Seahawks. So I don't know. I'm just saying. That's all I'm saying.
Hey, as the Niner fan, I hope the Panthers win. Like, come on, let's go. I'm rooting for the Panthers. But in terms of the odds here, I mean, you would think, because Seattle is supposed to be this high flying, they're supposed to be scoring so many points. So you kind of understand, well, if you give the Panthers 7 points, the Seahawks will cover that quickly. It's over, right? Mm-hmm. But I think it's gonna be a close game. So what do you think?
The Seahawks that beat the Rams looked like they could do no wrong, at least in the second half. As long as they protect the football, they're the team to beat. But they also needed absolutely every second a play clock to beat the Phillip Rivers Colts. So
yeah,
man, such a streak. It's so hard to feel like the Seahawks are a legit favorite to win it all, because 1 week they're the number 1 team, and the next week it was, well, Phillip Rivers has their number. So I don't know. I do think the Seahawks win, and I feel like they do cover. I think the Panthers are running. At the end of the Panthers are just thinking about the Bucs. That's all they're thinking about is beat the Bucs, win the NFC South. Next game, this week's pillow fight. We already talked about it. This is for all the draft stock there is. The New York Giants at Las Vegas Raiders. Even with those players going to IR, and also Brock Bowers, their amazing tight end. The Raiders are 2.5 point favorites at home against the Giants. Winner gets a slightly worse pick. Loser probably has the number 1 pick in the draft. So who's the winner / loser, depending on your perspective?
Well, I mean, you were saying it before. If the Giants do feel that Jackson Dart is their quarterback, they're not picking quarterback. And the Raiders need a quarterback. Mm-hmm. So as long as they're in 1-2, somewhere in there, I think they're fine. So I really don't even think if they win, then hey, kudos to you. But hopefully you lose the next game, because then you'll definitely be 1 or 2. But in terms of this game, I mean, if it is 4-2, hey, there you go. You lost money.
Last week, finally, it only took them 16 weeks of football. The play caller for the Raiders finally decided to let Ashton Jeanty play.
Oh, that guy.
And so, yeah, he only had like 188 yards from scrimmage and a couple of touchdowns. So it's because Jeanty had such a breakout game last week. There's that urge to go with the Raiders to win this game, but the Raiders didn't just put everybody and their mom on IR for no reason. They did it because they don't want to win. They want to secure the number 1 pick so that they don't have to wonder, about trading up, trading down. Is someone going to steal Mendoza from Indiana? They don't want to have to worry about that. And the way they can not have to worry about that is relegate Jeanty back to like 6 carries and let's get the hell out of Dodge. So I'm actually going to go with the Giants because I think the Raiders refuse to win. I really do. Again, I hate that, but I think the Raiders are going to refuse to win. Moving on, we have the Philadelphia Eagles and Buffalo Bills. The Bills are only 1.5 point favorites at home. This is an interesting game, Shane, because generally speaking, the Eagles don't have anything to play for. They've already won the NFC East, and they're not going to be overtaking anyone for the 2nd or number 1 seed with the skid that they went on late in the year. So, but on the other hand, there's still 2 weeks left to go in the season. So I don't think the Eagles are going to rest their starters for 2 weeks and then go play a playoff game.
Right.
The Bills would still like to win. The Bills are still it's a little bit of an outside shot, but they still have a shot of overtaking the Patriots in the AFC East, albeit time's running out. But with that said, Bills have something to play for. Eagles don't, but they're only a 1.5 point favorite in this game. Vegas doesn't seem to like the Bills. What do you think?
Well, I mean, maybe the Eagles will play for the number 2 seed. I can't remember if that's possible or not, but I mean, the number 2 seed is not the number 1 seed. You're not gonna get home field advantage, but it's better than having to play all your games away. So I can see them playing for something at least. But yeah, I think the Bills and Eagles, this is gonna be a good game. And 1.5 is just kind of it's just like it's gonna be a dogfight. That's what this is telling me. So I can see this going either way.
It is true that the Eagles could if the Bears and Packers both go on losing streaks to end the season, then the Eagles can overtake them to be the number 2 seed. But I just don't feel like that's a big enough. It's the Eagles are going to play this game.
Yeah,
but it's not a big enough reason for them to show all their cards and put anybody, on injured reserve over this game. The Bills need it more than the Eagles, but again, I think the thing that's surprising me is that 1.5 point line. That tells me that Vegas thinks the Bills aren't for real. That's what that tells me, is they think that the Eagles are going to, flip the switch, so to speak, and the Bills aren't for real. And sorry for our Bills friends. I kind of agree. I think the Bills aren't for real. I think that their defense are not going to win against a serious contender. And I think Josh Allen cannot single-handedly win a Super Bowl. So I kind of agree. I don't know. And finally, game of the week. Now, this is a game that does still matter.
Yeah.
It's the Chicago Bears at your San Francisco 49ers. Shane, if the Bears win, it's a done deal. They've won the NFC North. They're going to be at least the number 2 seed. As we've talked for weeks now, unbelievable turnaround from last season to this season. What a job Ben Johnson's done at head coach. Versus the 49ers, who They're a little bit on the outside looking in with the Seahawks and Rams, but they do still have a path. They do still have a path to winning the division and having the number 1 seed. If the 49ers win out, which would include a victory over those Seahawks, and the Rams also lose another game, a bit unlikely, but if it did, they still have a shot at number 1. At the very minimum, this is like playoff football right here. This is 2 serious contender playoff teams playing 2 weeks before the playoffs start.
Yeah.
What do you think?
This is a possible NFC championship matchup right here. So this is good stuff right
Sure.
here. But yeah, so if the 49ers do win this game, they're just over 50% again at number 1 seed. Now, if they lose, it's like pretty much non-existent, like 1%. It's non-existent for number 1 seed. They're basically going to be like 5, 6, 7. That's what seeding they're going to be if they lose this game. I think in terms of what's going to happen with this game, a lot of it does depend on if George Kittle does end up playing this game, because it's kind of like 50-50. It's kind of like day to day or whatever. I mean, his backup Jake Tonjes did pretty well when he stepped in for him. So I wouldn't be 100% concerned with him not playing, but I think if Kittle doesn't play, then Chicago Bears definitely have a better chance of winning this game, because George Kittle, we've seen it. We saw it with the Colts game and the Titans game, where if Brock Purdy throws the Kittle, it's almost pretty much like virtually he's going to get the ball. You know what I mean? So, but I do think this is going to be a close game. So I would say that -3 does look pretty good to me. I could definitely see it as being won by like a game-winning field goal or something like that.
It's an interesting game because the Bears are going on the road to play in San Francisco, but in a few weeks it may be San Francisco going on the road to play in Chicago. It may very well be. We don't know. It also brings in that strategy part of it of, do you want to show everything you've got in the playbook to a team that you might be playing in a few weeks? Right. For all the marbles. I don't know. That's above my pay grade. I will say this: the Bears are the number 2 rushing team in the NFL. They can run the football.
Jeez,
Swift, Monangai, a crazy 2-headed beast, which is good because while Caleb Williams has had a better season, he still has like the lowest completion percentage amongst starting quarterbacks in the NFL. So they need to be one of the best rushing teams in order to be a serious contender. However, the 49ers are number 8 in rush defense. So that's strength on strength.
Crazy. That's crazy to me, because as someone that has sees a lot of the Niners games, they did pretty well against Jonathan Taylor with the Colts. So that's pretty cool. But man, at Tony Pollard with the Titans, it's like he could do whatever he wanted against that run defense. So I don't know. It's kind of crazy. And
you lost me at Titans. I just if you played the Titans and anything went wrong, then it's starting to start evaluating. That's all I can say.
I'm just saying.
Here's my prediction. I'm gonna go 49ers on this one, which I'm sure will make you happy, but with a comma, but this better not be like a last second, fourth quarter or OT drive pulling out everything out of the playbook, because you don't want to be going to Soldier Field in 3 weeks and have to do it again.
Oh yeah, that's gonna be So one thing I was gonna say about this before you get to our final thought is that if the Niners do win and they end up getting the number 1 seed, they're home. So literally their next games could just be all at home, because the Super Bowl is in their house. So hey, that's gonna be pretty good odds for them to win the Super Bowl. So when we do talk about postseason and after the season and draft, I'll be wearing my 49ers Super Bowl t-shirt. Hopefully, maybe, probably not.
That's only if somehow the Falcons beat the Rams. And also dependent on the outcome of that Seahawks 49ers game.
I said it wasn't 100% guaranteed. It's possible. But I mean, the Falcons winning, I don't know. Hopefully Michael Penis can do something.
He won't be playing. Hopefully
he'll do something. Hopefully he can do something.
Hopefully he can rub Kirk's shoulders. Okay. With that said, Shane, do you have a final thought?
I hope the 49ers win that game against the Bears, and I hope they win the Super Bowl. And I'll be
you've never had a final thought in your life. Every single final thought you've ever had has been, I hope the 49ers win this week, with the exception of fire Kyle Shanahan. That was your final thought one time. Was fire Kyle Shanahan.
Yeah, fire Kyle Shanahan if they lose this game. There you go.
Yeah, or coach of the year if they win this game. That's
hey, yeah.
I'll tell you my final thought. Myles Garrett, defensive end of the Cleveland Browns, is going to be going for the single season sack record this weekend against the arch rival Pittsburgh Steelers. He said, it's an honor to be trying to go after legendary quarterback Aaron Rodgers. Here's a funny little throwback. In 2001, Michael Strahan set the single season sack record by lightly tapping a Green Bay quarterback you might remember named Brett Favre, who basically was criticized to hell and high water because it certainly appeared as if he basically just sat down, giving the sack record to Strahan for no effort whatsoever. A lot of people didn't like that play. And now Brett Favre's protege, Aaron Rodgers, is going to be trying to stay upright against another guy going for the sack record. With the quick caveat, if for some reason the Steelers sit Rodgers, either because the Ravens lose or Rodgers is going to get a week of rest, whatever the reason is, that would mean that Myles Garrett would be going for the sack record against his best friend, Myles Garrett, the guy who he took off his helmet and hit him with it. Boy, what it would mean for him to get the sack record against that guy.
He should just take his helmet off and whack it with him when he gets the sack. Like,
man. It's what are the odds that things work out the way they are? With that said, folks, enjoy every last second of it because it's almost over.
Brett Favre almost got in a fight with the person that I think had the sack record before Strahan got it, and they actually almost got into a fight. So Brett Favre just continues to have a great post career.
We did it under an hour.